I wanted to know, how the heck did this happen to me in the first place? I had no idea back then, and this is still true today, that one in
That's a
eight
good
women,
question.
yeah, 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. And I honestly never thought that I would be in that statistic. Never in my wildest dreams.
Mm,
I thought I was doing okay. I thought I was taking care of myself. I thought I was
yeah.
protecting myself against eventually becoming a victim of this disease. The reason why some people get breast cancer and others don't really is
Mhm.
rooted in the power of your immune system. Got sick a lot, lots of
Right.
sinus infections, lots of skin
Right.
rashes, lots of UTIs, lots
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
lots of digestive issues, constipation, you name it. I had all this
Yeah.
gamut of things. I also learned that, and this one might shock me,
Mhm.
that
Yep.
most cancers, most, not all, I wanted to know, well, what actually causes cancer? How, because this was a question I asked my doctor and they couldn't give me an answer. She said, well, we don't know. We don't really know. It's
Really?
probably just.
If you've ever had a health scare and had that quiet nudge to take care of your body, you need to hear this. She was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2016, and instead of following the path that most people expect, she made a different decision. Through prayer, guidance, and changing her lifestyle, she chose a natural healing journey, and today she's 10 years cancer free. But here's what makes this powerful. She didn't wait for a second chance. And if you have been putting your health on the back burner or waiting for the right time to make a change, this conversation might be the wake up call that you need.
My life, I had hit a point where everything was like perfect, if you could even say such a thing. Everything was just going really great. And at that moment in my life, I got the rude shock that no one ever wants to get. I went to visit my doctor for my annual checkup. And that's when they told me that they saw something suspicious in my breast. And then the next thing I know, they're telling me, you have breast cancer. And that um, was the most terrifying thing I think that I have ever experienced in my life. And I'm sure anyone else who has had an encounter with breast cancer or even any other type of cancer, they would also agree that there's nothing more terrifying than that. Um, but looking back, I can honestly say now that even though those are not words that anybody ever wants to hear, for me, they actually became a turning point. It was a pivotal moment in my life that changed everything about the person that I am, the person I was, and also helped me to be the person that I am today. So through that experience, I I guess I had two choices. I could have panicked because
Yeah.
there's a lot of pressure when someone is diagnosed with cancer. There's a lot of pressure to get right into treatment right away. There's a lot of fear
Mhm.
in that situation. But being a Christian, I just believe that no really good decision is ever made when it's a knee jerk reaction to something that's fearful, because the Bible tells
Mm.
us that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear. He's given us a spirit of power, a spirit of love, a sound mind in Christ Jesus. So even in like the shadow of the valley of death situation that breast cancer is, I
Yeah.
think it was important for me personally to just get close to God, because honestly, when you're in that situation, there's not a lot of time to process what you're being told. You're being
Mm.
told you have this disease. You're being told that you need to treat it. You need to do something immediately, or the consequence of that is going to be physical death tomorrow. This is really what it feels like.
Yeah.
And so,
Mhm.
I really wanted to understand what was happening to me at that moment. And my husband, blessed, my husband happens to also be Christian. And so, we both agreed that it would be a good idea before moving forward to just spend some time in prayer. Seek the Lord,
Right.
what's going on? What can I do here? And the other
Mhm.
thing too was that I really felt I felt unsure about the protocols that were being offered to me, because any person who's diagnosed with breast cancer, The
Yeah.
protocol is, it doesn't matter, like if you're, it doesn't matter the stage. It doesn't matter, whether you're an estrogen positive or progesterone positive, HR, HER2,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the type of breast cancer it is, the
Mm-hmm.
protocol is always going to be surgery, radiation, chemo. And then in my case,
Mm-hmm.
I did have an estrogen positive breast cancer, and that meant a lifetime of being on tamoxifen, which is a
Mm.
drug that suppresses your estrogen production in your body. So, as I considered those options, I felt unclear about what was the pathway moving forward, because we asked the doctor, okay, well, if I do this, will
Mm-hmm.
that be the end of it? Will I be
Yeah.
cured? And the doctor said to me, which I was surprised. She said, well, there's no guarantees. You'll consider
Mm.
this to be a success for you if
Mm-hmm.
there's no
Mm.
recurrence of cancer within 5 years. And I thought, wow, five
Right.
years is not that long of a period of time.
Yeah.
And I also was thinking about the protocols, because maybe people don't know this, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the protocols that are offered are actually cancer forming protocols themselves. So, like, um,
Right.
well, not surgery, but what, chemotherapy
Yeah.
is known to cause cancer. We all know
Right.
radiation causes. I mean, think about it. If you go
Okay.
to the dentist, you go
Yeah.
in, they want to take an x-ray, they load you up with the metal vest, and then the tech runs out of the room and they take the picture because they
Right.
don't want to be exposed, right? So, you think
Right.
about that small amount of exposure at,
Yeah.
what the potential of that could be, and then thinking about having a large area of your body exposed to this type of radiation, it's kind of a given that the
Yeah.
consequence could be that it could trigger cancers down the road. The other thing about it too is that
Mm-hmm.
most people don't know this, but or maybe they do. I didn't know it
Yeah.
fully at the time, but
Mm-hmm.
things
Mm-hmm.
like chemotherapy actually um, compromise your immune system and make it difficult for you to get better, because that's the thing that's built in, that the Lord built into our body, so that way we can live and exist and not you know be killed by anything that we come in contact with.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we didn't have immunity, any little
Mm-hmm.
germ that we came in contact with would pretty much wipe us out. And then the other thing that I had learned, I didn't know it at the time, but I
Yeah.
learned a lot of this stuff through my time in prayer and also
Mm-hmm.
seeking information, that tamoxifen actually is linked in scientific literature to uterine cancer. So I was thinking
Wow.
about, yeah, right.
Wow.
So I was thinking about all these things, and I'm thinking 5 years,
Mm.
and then I'm thinking, well, okay, if I
Mm.
go through this protocol and I'm
Mm.
exposing myself, repeatedly
Yeah.
to these toxic types of, procedures and chemicals that are known to
Yeah.
cause cancer,
Mm.
just using common sense, you would think to yourself, there's a good bet. I'm exposing myself to things that cause cancer. I,
Yeah.
it's possible I could have a recurrence of cancer. On top of
Absolutely.
that, the fact that the treatments are pretty devastating on the system, I probably would
Mm.
have been sick, physically sick through those procedures, and have a difficult time recovering after, because of being immunocompromised. And so anyway, I went home and I prayed, because it was like, I felt like there had to be something else. Is there anything else? I was hoping there was
Mm.
something else, and I
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
sure. But as I spent time with the Lord, He actually led
Mm.
me on this pathway of discovery. Now, I want to preface this by saying I do not, or prior to this, I did not have any background in science or medicine, nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was just
Mm-hmm.
your typical American woman, living day to
Mm-hmm.
day, very stressful
Mm-hmm.
existence, eating a lot of American junk food. That was my
Mm.
life. I didn't really exercise or take care of
Yeah.
myself physically, although I thought I did. I thought I was doing okay. But
Wow.
as I look back, it became clear to me that a couple different things became clear to me
Mm-hmm.
through that path of prayer and discovery, was that number one, I wanted to know, how the heck did this happen to me in the first place? Like, I had no idea back then, and this is still true today, that one in
That's a
eight
good
women,
question.
yeah, 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. And I honestly never thought that I would be in that statistic. Never in my wildest dreams, you know.
Mm.
And I was always a very compliant person, so I would always go every year for my checkups. I would always get my mammograms. I
Yeah.
would always do all the things. So I thought I was doing okay. I thought I was taking care of myself. I thought I was
Yeah.
protecting myself against this, you know, potentially becoming a victim of this disease. And so
Yeah.
that I wanted to understand more of. And that's when I learned that, number one, things that we do as women, like when they are promoted, especially during like, the breast cancer awareness campaigns and whatnot, really all revolve around screening, not really
Mhm.
prevention. And that was
Mhm.
kind of a thing that I had to wrap my head around. So the things that I had been doing would really only tell me if I had cancer. It wouldn't do anything to help me to prevent from getting cancer in the first place. So that was a biggie for me. Might
Right.
sound naive,
Right.
but that was
Yeah.
my experience. And
Mm-hmm.
then I wanted to know, well, what actually causes cancer? How, because this was a question I asked my doctor and they couldn't give me an answer. She said, well, we don't know. We don't really know. It's
Really?
probably just, yeah, we don't know. It's probably, bad luck, bad genes, bad luck of the cards, this
Oh,
kind of, non-answer answers, that
wow.
were not satisfying to me. So that's when I learned that the reason why some people get breast cancer and others don't really is
Mhm.
rooted in the power of your immune system. And that was something I didn't
Right.
understand anything about. And so as I learned more about that, I realized that for a long period of time prior to my diagnosis, my body was sending
Yeah.
me signals. It was sending me signals. Like
Right.
I was when I was diagnosed, I had just entered menopause, but in like that 10-year period prior, when,
Mm-hmm.
most of us gals, our bodies start changing as we get a little bit older, our hormones start
Mm-hmm.
shifting, your body goes
Yeah.
crazy, and you don't know what the heck is happening to you. Like,
Yeah.
you start putting on
Mm-hmm.
weight, you can't get it off, you know, all these weird types of things were happening in my body. And um, I know I just met you guys and I've just met you also, but
Mm-hmm.
some of this is going to be probably TMI, Sandy, but
Yeah.
I had a lot of experience with things like, first of all, I caught a lot of colds. I have a son, and every time he went to school, I would dread it
Oh,
because I knew he'd come home and bring something and I'd be the one to get it. Got sick a lot, lots of
right.
sinus infections, lots of skin
Oh.
rashes, lots of UTIs, lots
Mm-hmm.
of lots
Mm-hmm.
of digestive issues, constipation, you name it. I had all this
Yeah.
gamut of things, but they were not things that, and even though I went to the doctor every time I experienced some of these symptoms, they were not things that were considered, a critical thing, or, that it was pointing to anything. Oh, it was just whatever it was. And then
Yeah.
dutifully I would get my prescription and I would take it. But then usually once I was done with my antibiotics or whatever they gave me, eventually
Mm-hmm.
those things would crop up again. They would keep rearing their head. Like I was caught in a cycle of this, you know, being kind of sick or off all the time. But
Yeah.
weirdly, I got used to it. And I think that happens to us as
Right.
women because we start
Mm-hmm.
getting older. We start
Mm-hmm.
thinking, oh, well, your
It's
body's
it's part
breaking
of being older.
down, just part of
Mm-hmm.
the process. And, everybody around you is complaining about all the same stuff. And
So it must
everybody's
be
on
normal.
Right. And everybody's on some kind of med. And if you're not on a med,
Mm.
and I'm not faulting meds. I'm just saying, like, if you look at the big picture,
Mm.
everybody's on some kind of med. If they're not on a med, there's something over the counter that you can get for symptom relief. And it's just the way that
Mm.
are, we become complacent and accepting
Yeah.
of living that way and just thinking it's
Mm.
normal.
Yeah.
So, but what I didn't realize is that all of these things were rooted in the same thing. Now, I ask you this
Mm.
question, like if you get a sinus infection and then you have, maybe a few months you get better from that. A few months later you have a UTI,
Yeah.
and then a little bit later you get a skin
Mm.
rash. Like
Mm.
those
That's a
things,
lot.
they don't
Yeah.
seem like they are connected, right? Because one's in your head,
No.
one's in your other area and one's on your
Mm-hmm.
skin, right? It doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
you don't put those things together and think, oh, wow, this is my body sending me signals. But the truth
There's no
is,
connection.
all of those things are rooted in um, errors and problems in your metabolism that come from vitamin
Mm-hmm.
deficiencies because of the way that we eat. And also, that impacts our immune system. So you actually end up with compromised immunity without knowing it. And that's where I was. And then as I've learned
Yeah.
about this, I also learned that, and this one might shock me,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
most cancers, most, not all, but most cancers take up to 10 years before they can actually be detected on any type of scan. So what that
Whoa.
means, scary, right? But what that means
That is
is
scary.
that, yeah, what that means is that there are things going on inside of our bodies that we may not be cognizant of. And they could be pointing
Yeah.
us to the fact that we are deficient in some way. Our immune system is compromised. So that opens up the door to things like cancer and other types of illnesses and other
Wow.
things, even like autoimmunity, to show up in the body because it's a slow, gradual thing that's happening.
Process.
Right. And so as I learned about this, I was like, wow. First of all, that took a lot of the fear out of the picture for me because,
Yeah.
and nobody likes to
Knowledge
talk
is
about
power.
Oh yeah.
Mm-mm.
And nobody likes to talk about cancer. Who wants to talk about that? Nobody. It's scary, right? Because
Nobody.
most of
Yeah.
us feel like there's nothing we could do about
You'll
that,
never.
right?
Yeah, that's
Most
true.
people feel like where we've been taught over the years that cancer is a genetic disease. And
Yeah.
from my standpoint, when I hear the word genetic, that sounds to
Mm.
me like it's hardwired into my body and there's nothing that I could do about that.
You can do to avoid it.
Right. But the truth is that that's not the truth. The truth is that there's a lot of things that we can do to affect the way that our cells work, the way that our cells replicate, the way that our DNA works in our body every single day of our lives. And those are the things that help us to actually prevent cancer and diseases. On the other side of that, those are the things that actually help us to heal from diseases. And I feel like this is
Okay.
really an important thing for people to understand, especially as
Absolutely.
Christians, because as I said earlier briefly, God hardwired healing into our bodies. Our bodies are designed to
Yeah.
heal. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
like anything, we need to support that process with the things that we do. And we can support that process. And and I learned as I learned about this, I was like, okay, so how do I do that? How do I support the process? And that's when I learned about how key nutrition is to that process. What we eat, what we drink, whether or not we rest, because when we rest, our body's healing processes kick in. What we eat and drink influences our immune system. It also helps to detoxify things from our system that could be offenders, that
Mm-hmm.
could be things that trigger things like cancer from growing. And then moving our bodies, because moving our bodies helps to um, increase our blood flow. And all of our immune
Right.
system is actually rooted in our gut, but our immune cells travel through our blood. So as we support our immune system, we strengthen, as we support our gut health, we support our immune system. As we exercise, we help to, oxygenate our body and move our blood around so that the things that actually are in our system to fight off cancer can actually get to where they need to go. So
Right.
as I learned about this, I was like fascinated
Interesting.
and I was so filled with
Yeah.
hope. It was like the total opposite of the feeling I had when I sat with my doctor, where I was totally filled with fear. I was totally filled with overwhelm. I felt completely hopeless. I did not know, what I should do or what I could do or if there was
Yeah.
even going to be a way out. And when I learned about all of these things, and granted, those things I learned just scratched the surface, but learning that helped
Yeah.
me to see that, wow,
Oh.
first of all, I probably had some hand in helping to promote cancer, even though I didn't realize it, just because of my being ignorant of these things and not knowing what I should do. But when you know more, you can do better,
Do
right?
better.
And
Yeah.
right? And so I thought, well, okay, if I need to bolster my immune system by changing what I eat, for me, it was life or death. So I thought, I'm going to do that. And my original goal
Yeah.
was just to like strengthen my body because clearly I was an immune compromised state because I was diagnosed with cancer. So something was wrong in there, right? So I thought, well,
Mm,
if nothing else, I'll change the way I eat and I'll take out foods that, cause cancer and I'll put in foods that are, scientifically they're known to fight cancer cells and to suppress
mm,
cancer replication. And my main goal really was just to try to get better, to get in a stronger
mm.
state, to go through conventional treatment. Now, it was at that point where I met a woman who had been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer 10 years before my diagnosis. And it
Wow.
was
Wow.
right. And she was amazing. She was thriving and
Hmm.
she was confident and she was still alive. I mean, because I was thinking
Yeah.
back to my
Hmm.
own doctor's,
Hmm.
a prognosis where she was saying if I went through the treatment that,
Yeah.
I could probably figure on 5 years, if I could get past the 5 year mark, then,
Wow.
that would be okay. But here was a woman, 10 years.
10
And
years.
I was like, this is amazing. And you know what? When
Yeah.
I think back to that now, as you mentioned earlier, I am now 10 years cancer free. So at that time,
Yes.
she was 10 years cancer free, but she had been back then. You're thinking that's 20 years ago, right? When you look at the timeline,
Right.
we didn't
Right.
have stuff back then like the internet like we have today. We wouldn't have,
No.
like you wouldn't be where you are in the world talking to me where I am in the world the
No.
way we do today. And we couldn't find
No.
out information the same way. And yet she found this pathway to natural healing. And she was so amazing. And she gave me this really great pearl of wisdom. She said,
Yeah.
if you're even thinking about trying something natural, you may want to try it. If it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work for you, you can always go back and get conventional treatment. I mean, no doctor's ever going to tell you
Right.
can't get surgery. They're never going to tell you can't
Oh,
have
no,
chemo. And they're
no,
never
no
going to tell
chance.
you they
No
won't
chance.
give you radiation. Never.
No
And so,
chance. Never.
right. And so I thought to myself, wow, this is a great plan B because I had so much peace and confidence about doing something natural that I just felt
Yeah.
like, well, I'll try it and I'll see what happens,
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, I'll go back. But you know what? Through the whole process, I would just learn things, I would implement them on my
Yeah.
own. I would pray every day. And, God was always
Mm-hmm.
reminding me, like his word says that the wisdom of God travels on a pathway of peace. And that was my barometer.
That's right.
Did I have peace about what I was doing? Was I scared
Mm.
sometimes?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because lots
I
of
was.
times, you
Yeah.
step out in something that God is
Yeah.
showing you, and then right away, thoughts come in
Fear.
to sort of fear will
Mm.
come in to try to
Yeah.
deter you from that path. And I can remember several times, as I was changing things in my life and I was changing my diet, I would think, oh my gosh, am I making a mistake? Or sometimes be like, wow, this is really hard because I was such a hardcore junk
Oh.
food junkie, right? It was hard to make the
Yeah.
change. But, I would remind myself, you know what? No matter what I'm doing here, it's not like I'm doing some kind of weird um, drug that nobody's ever heard of, that no one knows,
Yeah.
what the side effects are going to
Yeah.
be. If nothing else, it's never going to hurt me to eat more broccoli. And that was the bottom
No.
line. And so
Wow.
even when it was hard, my husband would remind me, and he was great. He would say, you know what? Don't worry about tomorrow. Focus on what you're doing today, right? And then you'll get to tomorrow. Like that's what the Bible says, right? We do whatever
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
doing. Tomorrow has enough cares of its own. We just
If it's
concentrate
one,
on where
yeah.
we
Do
are
not
today.
worry.
Don't worry
Yeah. Do
about
not
it.
worry about
Right.
tomorrow. Do
Right.
not worry about tomorrow. Do not worry about today. Tomorrow is. Yeah. Yeah.
Tomorrow has enough
In
worries of its
Matthew. Yeah.
own. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I decided, it made more sense to me to, go hardcore with my diet and my lifestyle changes and,
Mhm.
praying every day, reading the word, focusing on scriptures that, we're all about healing and about the promises of God and the fact that, he does give every one of us, hope and a future, right? And those were the things
Absolutely.
I would focus on. And then again, changing my diet, changing the way I manage stress, changing my work schedule, changing things where I could affect change in a positive way. getting off the couch. I exercised. God, I hate exercise, but I did it.
Hmm.
And I did all
So,
these things.
sorry, Barbara. What type of exercises were you doing during that time?
Oh my gosh, it's super important, like for anyone who has cancer, to do things
Mm.
that help to move your lymphatic system. Now, this is a whole
And
other
what does that look like? Yeah.
yeah, well, your lymphatic system is the thing that goes around, and it helps to trap things that shouldn't be in your body and take
Mhm.
them out. But the thing about your lymphatics is they move very slowly. It's a slow moving
Oh, yeah.
system. So we want to encourage movement. It doesn't have a pump like circulation. It moves by your
Yeah.
heart pumping it, it pumps it. There's no
Mm-hmm.
pump for lymphatics. So we have to pump it. And by doing that, things that you
Right.
do are things like aerobic activity, especially good
Mm-hmm.
on a rebounder. So on a little trampoline, I got myself one of those through Facebook Marketplace, jumping up and down on the
Mm-hmm.
trampoline, walking and
Yeah.
swinging my arms, doing things where, I could get my lifting my limbs to encourage that flow to flush out that system. So I would do that. Um, yeah. And then, prioritizing sleep. And then I did this for like 6 months.
Was
And
this
then
on a
at
daily
that
basis?
Every day, yeah, every day. And so
Okay.
I did all these things, in combination every day. So it became like a total shift in the way that I did things every day and the things that I did every day. And after
Yeah.
6 months, I had to go back to the doctors because they wanted to see me. And at that time, they retested me again and they could not find the cancer that had been in my left breast at that when I was originally diagnosed. And so they gave me what's called
Mm.
no evidence of disease, or NED, and that's really what any cancer patient wants to hear. They want to hear there's no evidence of disease because technically that means you're in remission. And so that was a real amazing day where I was, giving God the
Wow.
glory for the whole thing.
Wow.
And then here I am like 10 years later. So that was actually interesting. Well, if I look back and I think about that whole thing,
Mm.
when that happened, I started reflecting on the things that I did. And what's interesting too is as I went through that process, things that I remember I mentioned to you before, I didn't feel well most of the time, but I thought
Yeah.
that was just normal. But I started to
Yeah.
actually feel better. I ended up regaining energy. At that time when I was diagnosed, I had just entered menopause and I had gained like
Mm.
35 pounds, which is kind of common for a lot of women when they enter menopause because of hormonal
Mm-hmm.
shifts. And
Yeah.
as I detoxed my body and changed the way I ate, I ended up losing that 30 pounds. And I've kept that off for 10 years. I started feeling better. I guess I out from the
Mm-hmm.
outside in, I started looking better. I
Yeah.
didn't honestly, I didn't go around telling people, hey, guess what? I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm doing this really weird thing. I'm going against my doctor's advice and
Mm.
I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
this experimental.
Yeah.
I didn't run around doing that. I just kind of thought it was like an experiment I was going to try. But
Right.
people started noticing a difference in
Mm.
the way that I looked. I noticed a difference in the way I felt. My confidence, was restored. My outlook about my health was restored. And honestly,
Understood.
I felt
Yeah.
better. And I still feel that way, better than I had when I
Mm-hmm.
was in my 20s. And that's saying something because I'm
Wow.
not 20
That's
anymore.
amazing. That's
So
amazing.
oh, and I got to give God the glory for it
The
because it's
praise.
not
Yeah.
something I ever would have dreamed up. But you know what?
No.
His ways are higher than our ways. And,
Understood.
yeah, and he can reveal things to us, um, strategies and plans that we couldn't even imagine. Or even if it tells them to us, we can't even figure out how that's actually going to work. But,
It's
the
so
point
true.
is that, trusting that you know, leading of the Holy Spirit and trusting the fact
Yeah.
that, God really is good and he
He's a-
really does, his will is for healing for our lives. And it just changed everything. And that's how I
Wow.
became a health coach. That was the impetus for changing my career path. Because as people were
Mhm.
noticing things about me, they started asking me, what are you doing? Oh my gosh, you look so great. You lost so
Yeah.
much weight, all
Yeah.
this stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
and then I would tell them my story and it started to help people just in general raise their hope about what's possible for their own health, whether or not they had any encounter with cancer, But for many people, with so many people being diagnosed with cancers every day, you'd be hard pressed to meet someone who hasn't had an experience with cancer, whether or not it's their own. It could be a family member, it
Or
could be a
someone else.
friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I think it helped to change, hopefully, it's helping to change some
Mhm.
people's perspectives. But what's interesting is, as I was doing all the things and I was implementing and I was feeling better and I could sense my body changing and then, after getting the all clear from the doctors, I started thinking to myself, why don't I know any of this? like like I'm
Yeah.
I'm up there in age. I'm not a kid anymore. How come nobody ever taught
Mm.
me any of this
Told
stuff?
you. Yeah.
And I
That's
thought,
true.
you know what? If someone had taught me, I
Yeah.
probably could have avoided cancer in the first place. And that's actually
Absolutely.
really the driver behind what I do today. I work as a health coach. I work with women who, are at that stage of their lives like where I was, where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I don't recognize my body anymore. Something weird is going on
Mm.
here and I don't know what to do about it. Or I work with women who, they have other health conditions and they have a lot of medications and they're tired of taking medications and they're hoping there's something they could do to affect a change.
Okay.
I work with women who are afraid of their breast cancer risk and I help them create, an environment in their body that's inhospitable to cancer to, so that way they can actually live in a space of prevention so they don't have to be
Mm.
afraid. And then I also help with
I love
women
that.
rebuild for those who have gone through conventional and they don't want to have recurrence. So there's a lot of avenues where it kind of
A lot of
intersects.
elements.
And that's what I
Yeah.
do as a
Yeah.
health coach. And
I
I'm
love
actually
that.
right now working toward my master's in nutrition because nutrition is such an integral factor. So learning more about, like how it really affects our bodies and what's going on in there and, the importance of the different foods and the nutrients and where we get them and how it affects our cells and all those processes that actually keep us healthy or help us recover from disease and live a vibrant life. I feel like that's an important piece to add to my toolkit as someone who's helping
Absolutely.
people in their lives. So yeah, I know that's me in more than a nutshell, but yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think I've got so many questions whilst listening to you. I've got so many things that I wanted to ask. And one of the things that you mentioned, which really, stuck in my mind, you said it right at the beginning, was, when we go for an x-ray, the dentist, they normally step out of the room. And
Mhm.
I said, wait a minute. Yeah, I've had many times that I've had x-rays at the dentist and they've actually stepped out in the room, but I didn't know that it was because of they don't want to be that radiation and everything.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought, wow,
It's
right. This
true.
is something.
It's
This is
true.
something that I've just learned. Yeah. And at what stage did they give you the all clear regarding the cancer? Is it after a year, after some
Six
months? How
months.
long after?
6 months.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. 6 months after going hardcore change. 6 months. Detoxifying my
Six
body,
months?
changing my diet, getting off the couch, all the things. But I can't say it's only that. I think a big key to the accelerated rate of that had to do with the
Mm,
fact that I coupled all of those things, you know,
every a lot of
with
things.
with prayer, like all those
Prayer.
things together with prayer, believing, you know, and being diligent with it and staying with it and not allowing myself to compromise, when it was not easy, So I think all those things.
Yeah.
But I think what's cool about that is it's amazing what's possible. It's amazing how resilient the body is. And it's amazing how the wisdom of God can come in and turn an entire
Yeah.
situation around, even one that seems like there's no way out of it, for sure. Yeah.
Wow, I love it. I love it. And even whilst listening to you, I just thought of something that my own husband always says as well. He's not really good with with medication. He always says that my body will heal itself. And by you saying it, it's just a confirmation that our bodies do actually heal themselves. And with you having to be praying and everything, it was just you submitting yourself to the will and the power of the Most High and having to go through every day through faith. And I want to believe that you were at a place of peace because you connected with the Most High.
Yeah,
I love that. I love
definitely.
that. Actually, love it. So,
Definitely.
how did
That
you?
was the driver.
Mhm. Yeah. So, how did you learn to carry what you were going through on a day-to-day basis, especially without others having to see or experience firsthand what you were going through? What was it? What were you going through behind the scenes? And how did you learn to carry that on a daily basis? I
Well,
mean, before they gave you the all clear.
yeah. Well, I think the whole key was that I knew what I needed to do, and I had gained an understanding of why I needed to do it. So that was number one. But the other side
Mhm.
of it is you mentioned this thing, how do you carry it? I think the whole key was not carrying it. For me, the
Mm,
whole key was to like really cast it on the Lord every single day because
mm,
carrying it would have crushed me.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
as I mentioned before, because the weight of some things is just too much, to bear. And thank
mm,
God, because we have him, we don't have to bear it, so that was
yeah,
major for me. And then, like I mentioned earlier, like I didn't go around telling a lot of people when I was in the midst of that whole season in my
okay,
life, because I believe that the Bible is really emphatic about having faith and not being swayed by unbelief. And I feel like if I had shared it with a lot of people who
yeah,
were not in the same mindset as
okay,
me, their fear could have swayed my own belief in the process. And then I would have had to carry the burden of the fear of the diagnosis, the burden of the fear
yeah,
of doing something different, and the burden of everyone
yeah,
else's fear who was worrying about me,
yeah,
which totally would have crushed me, And then on top of that, being in a state of fear like that, really, even scientifically, it's been proven that we're in that stress state, we're in a fear state, it compromises our immune system, and then that would have impaired the process and impaired my body's ability to rebound from it. So I think the key for me was focusing on the whatever I needed to do each moment of every day, being cognizant of fear mindset, that how the enemy will come in and try to fill your mind with fear and doubt and
yeah,
unbelief cat
absolutely.
and then every time that happened, and every single day, casting the cares on the Lord, receiving his peace in prayer, because the Bible says, even with big stuff, small stuff, that we shouldn't be anxious about anything. We should just, cast all our cares on him because he cares for us, right? And so
Yeah,
just doing those practices every single day. And it wasn't a one time thing. And it's still not a one time thing. Like even 10 years later,
yeah,
I still, my diet has changed to the point where I still eat the way I ate, where I was able to overcome that illness.
yeah.
And I still have to every day spend my time with him and cast my cares on him, whatever they are, and trust and believe that he has a way, even when there seems to be no way. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for mentioning that. I was going to ask you as well because you mentioned you spoke about the lady that you met and she introduced you to the maybe holistic way of doing things, the natural way. Instead of having to take go on chemotherapy and radiation and all these other things, what are some of the things that she suggested? What are some of the foods? And did you have to be taking vitamins instead as well? What was the whole process that you had to undergo for those 6 months?
Yeah, well, she had suggested an herbal remedy that has been around for quite some time. So I sought out
Yeah,
that herbal remedy, and but part of using that, the beginning portion of that had to do with being sure that I had detoxified my body from all the things. Now, you talk about toxicity. We all have it because unfortunately our over time, we're exposed to it in our air, our water, our food, and things like that. And
Yeah.
also in like
Hmm.
when we eat processed foods and things like that, you know, or drinking alcohol or whatever, stuff like that, we introduce toxins into our system, and that builds up over time. So a big key that was important for that was to detoxify the body and reset my immune function. So that way it would have the capacity to do what it needed to do. And then in conjunction with that, that meant, you know, eliminating foods that are known to, you know, promote cancer growth in the body, like you're going to hate me for this one, but like sugar,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
processed foods and things like that. And then, you know, getting back to eating really fresh whole foods, which is a little
Hmm.
tougher here in the US. Like I know in
Yeah.
Europe, it's a little easier because you guys have more
Mhm.
stricter guidelines about the foods that
Yeah.
are you guys are that are available for you guys to buy. Here it's a slow shift that's hopefully happening, but at that time it was much harder. Focusing on eating like really fresh foods, organic foods as much as possible. I did a lot of juicing, ate a lot of broccoli.
Hmm.
There's all this scientific evidence about, you know, broccoli and cruciferous vegetables containing components that are actually known to stop cancer growth, kill cancer cells. I did a lot of juicing carrots and beets, things to support my liver function, which is the major detoxifying organ in the body. Doing all of those things and moving away, because prior to making this shift, I ate a lot of processed foods, a lot of snack foods, because I was
Right.
busy. I was super busy. I had a business. I have a son, and at that time he was in his early teens, and so we were always going. We were always doing something, and I quite frankly didn't have the time to stop, or so I thought, stop and cook stuff. It was
Yeah.
just easier to get takeout. And honestly,
Hmm.
before this whole experience, I really didn't care. I didn't care about what I ate. My major priority was it fast and does it taste good? What it did to my body, I had not a clue, and I didn't care. And so what was happening, I was compounding all the stuff. So when I learned about it, I was like, wow, what I eat either affects my body in a positive way or a negative way. So I can choose, you know. And as I started making those choices that were key because I wanted to get better from cancer or at least survive cancer, you know, I thought, well,
Yeah.
okay, I guess I'll start eating the better stuff. But what's interesting about this is if
Hmm.
anybody had told me like
Yeah.
10 years prior to the diagnosis that one day I'd be eating healthy food and I would enjoy it, I would have laughed right in your face and I would have said, there is no way that's going to happen. And no one's going to tell me what to eat. That was my stance, you know? And then, but as I made these shifts, my body started
Mm.
to like crave really
Enjoying
good
it.
stuff. It felt good my body felt good when I ate that stuff. And then I started to really look to eat that stuff because I started to really enjoy it. So it's not so much like, you know, when you talk to people about maybe making shifts in their diet, most people are not hip to that idea. They're not keen to making those types of shifts because
The
the
shift.
perception is the food's going to be terrible. Nothing's going to taste good. I'm going to be hungry all the time and I'm going to
Yeah.
hate every minute of it. So I'm not going to do it. But what's interesting is that everything that I just listed, the total opposite is true. Like everything tastes better. You feel better when
Yeah.
you eat it. You get more energy when you eat it, and then you start to say, wow, I and then what happens is you notice, like when you make choices occasionally, like you're going to eat something that's not so good for you, your body starts telling
Hmm.
you right away. You say, wow, I feel really crummy when I eat that. I'm going to eat this other
Yeah.
thing. And then what happens is it's like a miraculous shift that happens where the choice becomes super easy and your life becomes exponentially better from the inside out as far as, you know, your health, you know, your energy, the way you feel. It's amazing. It's amazing for sure.
Wow. You're a testimony. You're definitely a testimony to that. Like I said, I've got so many questions, but obviously we don't have that much time to be able to ask everything that I want to ask. But I just want to highlight something to my audience for those who've missed it. From what you shared so far, one of the things that my audience actually learn is we can either eat health or we can either eat disease,
Absolutely
right?
true. Hmm. Choice is
And
ours.
yeah, the choice is ours, right?
Hmm.
And I also want to ask you, because you mentioned that that lady, she recommended a certain herb. And obviously, I'm putting a disclaimer out there that you're not giving any health advice. You're not just sharing what worked for you. You're not asking
Mm-hmm.
anyone to stop chemo. You're not doing any of that. You're
No, no,
just
no, no.
sharing your story and what
Mm-hmm.
worked for you.
Yeah.
And
It's called Cancer Medicine from Nature, and it's written by
right.
Roger Bloom. So if you guys are interested in
Okay.
learning more about what some of those, I would recommend that book. It's pretty enlightening. But yeah, yeah, there's a bunch. I wouldn't say it was like every one particular thing. And like you said, it's a very personal decision. So like I wouldn't fault
Yeah.
anybody if they decide they can't handle doing a natural treatment. If they want to go a conventional route, it's a very personal decision. I could just say though that, for people who are wondering or curious, which is where
Yeah.
I was. Is there anything else? I can honestly say, there are alternatives out there that are much more powerful than people realize. But like anything, I think consistency has to be the key with it too. Like it wasn't, I used those herbal things once and then I went
Mm-hmm.
back to the doctor and didn't
Mm-hmm.
change anything else about my life. And then
Mm-hmm.
they said, hey, okay, good. That was a magic bullet. There really isn't a magic bullet. The whole key is like learning to understand that, as we said, the healing is built into the way our bodies are designed, and that all the processes in our body work together. They work
Yeah.
in concert with each other. And there are
Mm-hmm.
foods so our body's created like that by the Lord. And then on the other side of
Mm-hmm.
it, the Lord has also created foods with all of the
Yeah.
components that support all these processes. So even that works in concert together. And when you get all of those things working together, you
Mm-hmm.
affect a change that's really profound in your body and your health. So that way, even as we're getting older, we don't have to feel crummy all the time. It's a misconception that we're getting older, so we have to feel like we're drained, we're tired, we're being run over by a truck every single day. We have to drag ourselves through our existence just because we happen to be a little bit older, and nothing could be further from the truth. And that's something that I never would have believed until I found myself in that situation. So, yeah.
So that's, in short, that's a false narrative, right?
It is. It is. And it's one though that we accept. And I'm not saying that people's symptoms are all in their head. They certainly are not.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
thing is that if you can understand, if when you start to understand that, the symptoms are rooted in processes in our inside of our bodies that are there that maybe aren't working quite right because we haven't provided them the fuel that they need to work right. Like if you have your car, right? Whether
Mm.
it's an electric car or it's a gas powered car, if you don't put fuel in it, it's not going to go anywhere, right? Or like
No.
in gas powered cars, like you have certain cars, like let's say you have a dream car and it needs a certain kind of fuel, and if you put a lower quality fuel in that vehicle, the performance is not going to be the same as if you give it the fuel that it really needs, right? And our bodies are
That's
the
right.
same way. We need to fuel them. We need to look at it that way and fuel them, you know, with what our bodies really need and can use. So that way our bodies can work the way they're designed to prevent diseases before they even begin, protect us when we come in contact with things out there in the world like virus or bacterial illness, and also empower our bodies down to the cellular level so that way we can heal from diseases and recover from them. And then not only that, but still live vibrantly after the recovery. So it's not like after recovery where it's like you went through this grueling battle, which is really what most people go through when they are, being treated for cancer, where you have to like hold on by the skin of your teeth and then hopefully you
Mm-hmm.
can recover to get better. But unfortunately, many times treatments that are that powerful often leave their mark in other ways in your body, and that leaves you compromised in other areas of your body. So what's really interesting about supporting the way that our bodies are designed to work naturally with food and with our habits and things like that is once you get to the point of recovery, it's not like you're depleted and you have to work harder to get better again. You're just better.
Right. As I was listening to you, I was just thinking in my head, wondering, what did your doctor have to say? Were they surprised? What was their response when they realized that you were now in the clear after 6 months? And even though you didn't go through any chemo and radiation therapy, what was the response?
There was no real response. It was more like a head scratcher. Like, we don't get this, but okay.
Oh, and we ain't asking you what happened.
No. But okay.
Keep it to yourself. We have an idea what happened, but we ain't gonna ask you.
Exactly. It doesn't, well, it was more like, this doesn't compute, but okay. So
It's okay. Keep it to
yeah.
yourself. This experience that you've had to go through, it's not easy having to go through that kind of diagnosis. What can you say about this particular experience having to have shaped who you are today? And what did it reveal about you to you?
Well,
In short, what did you learn about yourself?
I learned that I learned that I was misinformed, first of all, about a lot of things in my life in terms of my health. I also learned that I was mistreating myself for many years without realizing it. And that had to, because of that, I had to take some ownership. But the other thing that it also revealed to me is that God's wisdom is so amazing and available for really any situation, even a situation that seems impossible. It also taught me that it helped to reinforce to me, you know, how the Bible says, you know, together with God, all things are possible. We can do all
Yeah.
things through Jesus Christ who gives us strength. Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world.
And who that's
It
in the world?
reinforced all those scriptures that might seem intangible to people. It's not something that, you know what I mean? It's like it's in the scripture, but maybe we don't always
Yeah.
see how that applies in our life. And it also
Yeah.
helped me to realize that I am extraordinarily blessed to have had a relationship with the Lord through this process, because without him, I would never have found this solution. And without him, I never would have been able to do my part in the healing process to help for the full healing to be totally manifest in my body. I mean, honestly, you may not agree. I believe that God can, you know, heal people miraculously. Absolutely. In
Absolutely.
my case, it was a process, and it was a learning process too, because it helped me to realize something else that I never really could put two and two together with my life. You know how the Bible says, you know, our bodies are the temple of the Lord and we need to
Yeah.
respect that. And I
Yeah.
never really understood what that meant, but this whole process showed me what that meant and how I could, you
Nice.
know, apply it in my life every single day. So it showed me a lot of different things. It also changed my perspective on things that I was passionate about. Like prior to this, I was passionate about different things, always passionate about music and creative things,
Yeah.
and all of that's wonderful. But
Mm-hmm.
this gave me a true passion for health and wellness, something I never cared about,
Mm-hmm.
and gave me a real
Mm.
passion to try to share what's possible with people so that that way they can live an amazing life while we're here. In some instances, I get the opportunity to share, even as far as how this experience that I walk through couples with having the Lord in your life to really affect change, not only on a physical level or a spiritual level. So it changed me in so many different ways. It just changed everything about my life. And honestly, weirdly, I can say breast cancer changed my life for the better, because it was like
Mm.
a wake up call for every area of my life that I was sort of just coasting beforehand. I was kind of coasting along. Everything was
Yeah.
so okay. I thought it was okay. Everything was okay. And then, bam, guess what?
Mm.
Something's got to change.
Yeah.
Something has to give. But what's interesting about it is like I think when you get in those situations, sometimes you start to feel scared and resentful, and it
Yeah.
could be an opportunity for you to, well, not you, it could be an opportunity for a person to like shrink back from the Lord and say, "Oh my God, how could this have happened to me?" But
Mm-hmm.
it's an opportunity to take stock. What's going on in
Yeah.
my life? What have I been doing?
Yeah.
What could I do better? And then
Mm.
always being reminded that apart from him, we really can't do anything. We just can't. But when we go together with him, that's really when we can have total freedom and victory in our lives in every area. So yeah,
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. Absolutely agree. And thank you for re echoing the fact that our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit and we have to really take care of them. Got to experience the reality of that verse. It wasn't just something you just read in the Bible or in scripture, but it's something that you started to really have a revelation on. And thank you for re echoing that. And also, kind of picked up or kind of learned something as you were speaking, and that is we have to take a bit of responsibility sometimes to things that happen in our lives. In your case, you said you were stopped in the tracks, and that forced you to really look around and say, what do I need to change? What have I been doing which could have led to this particular issue? So, in short, what you're simply saying is we should not be victims of what we found ourselves in.
absolutely.
Cancer did not happen to you, but it happened for you because now it's a weapon, it's a tool that you're using to teach other people and open the eyes of a lot of people using the information that you had to learn, which you were clueless about.
Very true. Very true. I mean, weirdly, I don't believe that you know, I don't believe that for me personally that it was God's will that I get cancer. I don't personally believe that.
Mm, no, no,
I believe that there were things going on that affected
yeah,
changes going on inside of my body, metabolically speaking, and down to my cells that I had a hand in promoting without realizing it. And
no,
so I believe that even though that happened to me, that God turned
yeah,
that situation around for me. And it's really empowering when that happens, and it's also freeing in so many different ways. It's kind of weird. It's like, we don't really like to take responsibility for stuff because who wants to do that? But when you do that, though, it's an opportunity for a real learning experience. And so it's like, okay, well, I don't know how I got here, but okay, what can I do now? Rather than just like you're saying, being having a victim mentality, like, oh, look at me, look at this horrible thing that happened to me, and look at this. And I'm not saying that those are not valid feelings, because they certainly are,
yeah,
especially in a situation like
yeah,
that. But
mm,
we have a choice in that too. Are we, but a lot of that is rooted in fear. Are we going to stay fearful in that space? Are we going to um, just be passive in what's happening to us and just, I don't know, let other people make all our decisions for us? Or are we going to seek the Lord, seek the wisdom of God, and then have a say in what we're going to do and how we choose to react to the situation? That was my experience. I'm not saying it's everybody's experience, but I think that's a big key. It's like some stuff's going to happen in your life, whether, no matter what. I mean, let's be honest, we're people, we're in a
mhm,
world, stuff's going to happen. So it's like, how
yeah,
do we respond in those situations? And that's really why we as Christians are blessed to have the Lord, to have the Holy Spirit in our lives to guide us through these crazy situations and bring us out
yeah,
victorious on the other side, for sure.
yeah. I know, like what you're saying, that we all have go through different experiences and everything. But
Hmm.
whatever it is that you share today, I mean, let's be honest, it did work. It worked.
It
You
did.
know, it worked regardless.
It did.
Even though you didn't follow the what everybody else is supposed to follow. You followed a different path, and it worked. That's why we are here today. So,
True.
I mean, all honesty, whether people agree with what you're saying or not, it worked.
That's true. That's
Six
true.
months, it worked.
Amazing.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if there's anyone who's listening to you right now, Barbara, and is currently, maybe they've just been diagnosed, or maybe they were diagnosed a while ago, or a few months ago, or even today, and they've come across this video, what advice can you share with them? What is it that you want to tell them?
I want to tell you that cancer doesn't have to be a death sentence. That's number one. And number two, I wanted to encourage you that there are things that you can do to affect change in your body for healing. You just have to keep your eyes fixed on the fact that number one, the Lord has created your body with healing built in. If you've been through conventional treatment and you have residual effects from those things, you can heal from that too. It probably will just take a little bit longer, but it's not a hopeless situation. And that healing, total healing, and total deliverance is possible, and you can become healthy again in those situations. And for those people who maybe are recently diagnosed, I want to tell you first of all that chances are good that you have time. You have, like, I know from my own personal experience, when you receive a diagnosis, you feel like if you have no time. There's no time to make a decision. There's no time not to make a decision. There's no time to not get yourself into treatment. There's no time. You have to do it now. You have to do it this second. And the truth is that, as I mentioned earlier, if you've been diagnosed with cancer, chances are that cancer has been growing in your body for a little bit of time, even before they found it. And that being said, you probably are not, is probably not going to progress the day after you get diagnosed. So you do have a little time to process what's happening to you and to evaluate what your options are, so that way you can make a decision that's right for you, that's not rooted in fear and not a knee-jerk reaction to that. And then part of that process, whatever it is you decide, if you feel like a natural pathway to healing could be right for you, there are powerful options that you can explore. But if that's not right for you, it's also important to know that you can support your body through the process by, again, by making different choices about the things that you eat, etc. So, there's hope for people out there, whether you've been diagnosed, whether you have been through cancer, or whether even you're a person who might be considered in a high risk category. It's not inevitable that, the end is going to be a bad outcome. There is a
Mm.
possibility for hope for you for the rest of your life to actually heal and get better and get stronger and live free from the fear of cancer. So that would be what I would share with people, that there are options out there.
Thank you so much, Barbara. So, for those who've been listening, I'm sure you heard what she said. There's hope. There is hope. It's not a death sentence. It does look and seem, it might look and seem like a death sentence, but there is hope.
There
So,
is.
for those who have connected to your story, Barbara, and they would like to maybe connect with you further after today, after this, where can they find you? And how do you currently help or assist the people that you work with?
Typically, when I work with people, we kind of establish a little bit of a relationship because it's important to get to know people and to understand, your how you eat, how you live, so that way we can together find a solution that's going to be right for your own lifestyle and for your own body. Because even though we're all women, we all are bio individuals, so that way it means that, things are should be tailored to you specifically because you're a unique person. So I work with people one-on-one like that. And normally when people are interested, they could, reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at good_nature_wellness, or that's the name of my business, Good Nature Wellness, or on Facebook at Good Nature Wellness. And, for people who are interested, I have a gift I'd love to share with your listeners. It's a resource that I put together that shares more about my journey, more about 5 things that are really important for most women, or actually every woman, to know about breast cancer, things I wish I had known prior to my diagnosis, that if I did, I know would have made all the difference. And in there, I share some things that, you could start doing every day that would lower your risk and help to bolster your immunity, so you could start feeling really great. And if you want to get that, you could just send me a message, or you can go to www.goodnaturewellness.com/5thingsfreebie, or you can email me healthcoachingwithbarbara@gmail.com.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate. And thank you to all our viewers. And thank you once again, Barbara, for sharing your story with so much grace and hope, for giving hope to our viewers. Thank you so much. Barbara's story was literally like being given a cheat sheet on how to avoid finding yourself in a cancer diagnosis. She spoke about changing our lifestyles, lifestyle habits, the food, and exercising. So if we start applying these things that she has shared, you'll see that she has literally handed us a cheat sheet. So thank you so much. Your story, your journey has been a powerful reminder that sometimes the very thing that is meant to stop us, the very thing that is meant to stop us in our tracks and pull us down and take us out, could be the very thing that will be your wake-up call, which leads to purpose. And as we see in Barbara's story, it led her to start helping women regarding their health and how they can change their whole lifestyle. So thank you. And your whole story has been a reminder. It reminded me of the book of Jeremiah 29, verse 11, which says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, the plans to prosper you, plans to give you hope, plans to give you a future and not to harm you." And I see that this particular verse, has been fulfilled in Barbara's life. So once again, Barbara, thank you for allowing the Most High to turn your test into a testimony and into a gift that you are now gifting other people. So thank you so much. For those who are watching, if you've enjoyed this conversation, be sure to like this video and share this with a friend who needs it. I'm sure you know a lot of people that can benefit from this story. And don't forget to subscribe so that you do not miss out on any of the conversations that we'll be having on this channel. So for now, we're checking out, and do take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.